Hey guys, it's me Ben with Experience Kills, and I am going to get straight into this for you today. I'm recording this review of F1 2020 as I sit here having just watched qualifying for the Austrian Grand Prix. So finally, we have returned to racing in the year 2020, and that brings with it, guess what? A new iteration of the long-running, much-loved franchise by Codemasters. And like I said, I'm looking at F1 2020. But I want to make something clear right now. I am doing this solo. Now, if you're familiar with the channel, and I hope you are, and if you're not, please like and subscribe. But the reason I'm doing it solo is that my compatriots here at Experience Kills, my partners in crime, Richard and Cameron, neither of them have much love for F1. Both of them enjoy a good racing game, but they really aren't into the sport on the same level as I am. And let's be honest, it can be kind of boring if you're trying to talk to someone about F1 who has no real interest in the minutiae or the technicality of the sport. And that's kind of what makes F1 so great to us fans, is those level of details. And I'm going to get into all of this. I'm going to get into the new features this year of F1 2020. That's where my focus is going to be. If you look back in the channel's history, you'll see reviews of pretty much the entire generation's worth of F1 games, and this has built upon that foundation. One quick thing I want to mention before we get into all that, however, is that I'm playing this pre-release, which means a couple of things. First, there is multiplayer, but I've not had a chance to test it. I'm sure it's fine. Secondly, there is going to be some changes to the game around the release point, where there's going to be some new patches coming out, because Codemasters in this situation this year for the first time ever, where they're releasing the game almost before the actual season of the sport we love has started. So things like livery have changed for the Williams cars. I don't know if they're going to change the Mercedes cars to match the new black livery for Black Lives Matter, which by the way is an amazing thing that Mercedes has done, but I don't know. There's going to be some changes there. So, you know, expect some balance issues that might be that have appeared for me perhaps in my pre-release coverage to have been sorted out. Things like the final levels of currency in the new My Team mode. And so, with a little bit of racing here, let's get into My Team. I'm not gonna lie, my focus this year, almost entirely in reviewing F1 2020, has been on My Team, which is the first big change and addition we've seen to F1 since the reintroduction of classic cars this generation. But this really has never been done before in the F1 series, which is a full team management mode. It's not just your race mode where you're going in as a driver and you're replacing one of the team members of, say, Renault, like I did it in the previous year's coverage. No, this time around you're building a team from scratch, which is super exciting, and I've had a great time doing it. So being the 11th team on the grid, which is awesome, so we have 22 cars racing, which means none of the other drivers that you're familiar with have been kicked out to make room for your addition to the team. And so My Team, Experience Racing, it had to be that, didn't it really, guys, considering the name of the channel here and everything. I've gone for a black and red livery, a little bit like reminiscent of Haas and a few other teams, but that's the look I've gone for. And I'm all about wanting to get in there and win immediately. You can customize the logo, you can customize the look, the livery of the car, you can customize your suits, your helmets, your gloves, even your podium finishing celebrations, which is fantastic. Really gives you an investment into the sport, really gives you an investment into the whole kind of milieu that is F1. It makes you feel like you're really part of the experience in ways that we've never seen before from the F1 games by Codemasters. There's something really rewarding about being able to develop your team throughout the course of the season. So, you're going to be doing full, rich upgrades to your facilities, which are going to affect your car performance. You're going to be doing things where you're going to be doing more interviews and how you're going to be like picking your second teammate, the guy that's going to be driving with you, at least to start with. You're going to be making money, which means, you're going to be thinking about the financial responsibilities of your sponsors and, how are you going to get extra money out of them, depending on maybe how you place in the race or, how you drive throughout the weekend. There's lots of variables at play here, and it really adds a level of depth to the experience that we haven't seen to this point. Though don't get me wrong, the previous season modes have still been great fun, and especially as you can continue over multiple years and switch teams, and you can develop the team in those modes. But what we have with My Team is sort of fresh and new. For example, the main way you would develop your car in the previous games was you'd get the resource points from free practice sessions prior to qualifying in the race. And that's still there, and that's still, you know, an important factor of the game. And if anything, it's a slight criticism to see that those free practice modes are the same thing they have been now for multiple games of this generation. So the way you get that currency really hasn't changed, but it's not the only way to get those resource points. You now get them from just your, you know, general facilities. You get them on a weekly stipend between the races. So you do have a defocus on the importance of those free practice sessions, though if you're like me, you're still going to want to do them just as much. So in relation to the similarities that we're seeing from free practice, the weekend for the races hasn't really changed much in any way. You're still doing those free practice sessions, you're still doing qualifying, you know, and you have the same level of options for those events as you have done before. You know, free practice is what free practice is, and it doesn't really change in any way. But you can shorten qualifying from the 3 qualifying sessions down to 1, as you have been in the past, and races can be anything from 25% to 100% in length. And of course, as we'd expect from these F1 games, you have a raft of setting options for difficulties, though that's actually been developed this year. I must say, and what is a smart move by Codemasters, they've introduced a casual control option. So if you switch that over when you're in a race, pre-race situation, you can make it easier for someone just to dive straight into the experience. It will reduce things like the difficulty of driving off the road surfaces, and it'll just simplify the options so that you don't have as much granular choice, but you can make it much more easy in an onboarding way for a new player to get into the game. And of course, what we've seen with this delayed F1 2020 season is that people have been looking at the esports. People have been looking for the first time ever at this video game. It's had a much more wider reach than ever before, and that means you might be getting fans of the sport coming to the game that have never played a racing game before or even a video game before. So giving them this opportunity to get on board in the easier way is really, really clever. The other thing that's come back this year is split screen. And I had a little go at that with my wife, and I put her on we put us both on the casual control mode, and it was kind of like the Mario Kart version of F1. It was kind of amusing. I was bumming it down the track, you know, basically ignoring corners because there was no penalty for going off the racing line, basically just driving all over the grass and the gravel because really it didn't have that much effect, doing spins in the center of the track and still coming out on top and winning the race. And, you know, that's fine. It doesn't need to all be a big sim experience. It can be just a laugh, especially if you have a friend with you or another half or a spouse or whatever that enjoys the sport, doesn't play a lot of games. Hey, why not? Just have a little bit of fun. Bum it around as your favorite race, guy like Lewis Hamilton or Danny Rick or whatever, and just have a good time. And that's what you can do with split screen. It's nice, it's back. It's not a huge feature for me that's important. That's not why I come to the F1 games. I come to do, I wouldn't say full sim racing, but I like the challenge of single player, the immersive race weekend, etc., etc. As I mentioned previously, multiplayer is back, of course, this year. How could it not be? Especially with the huge emphasis Codemasters now puts on its esports presentation. There is a big dedicated menu to that. There's nothing really there right now because it's not happening at the moment, but it's all going to be kicking off. And the same thing as I mentioned before, I've not been able to test multiplayer because I'm playing it pre-release, but the super license system is there, which means those people that just want to cause trouble will get the marks on their licenses and therefore be matched with other people that just want to cause trouble. And, you know, conversely, those that want to race properly and accurately and simulation will then be matched together so they can have a better experience. It's a good feature. It works well. It's not why I play the F1 games because I'm just not that good, but I'm glad it's there. Finally, this year we saw a focus on the packaging and the marketing on the 70th anniversary, and there's also the Michael Schumacher edition of the game that's been released. Unlike last year's Senna edition, the Schumacher edition doesn't give you any kind of specific Michael Schumacher modes. It does give you a character model you can choose for in your team and your basically your career option. It also gives you a few additional cars and I believe some livery options and stuff for your appearance of your driver, etc. However, it's not that much, to be honest, as an addition. it's nice that it's there, and it sits next to the other classic car options that are there in the game. And again, it's nice that it's nice to travel back through history and jump into these classic race cars and fire around a track, or even do a few Grand Prix or whatnot in that era. They bring them into the career modes by introducing invitational races, which are fun to do, and in the My Team mode that actually gives you extra rewards as well, so they are worth doing. They certainly incentivize you to play them. However, they're not integral. It's a nice added feature, and like I said, is there a reason to necessarily spend the extra money on the Michael Schumacher Edition this year? Probably not, unless you're a massive fan of Schumacher himself. So, beyond the big addition of My Team this year, two things stand out due to their absence from the real-life sport. This year in 2020, we were going to go to two brand new, tracks. We were going to visit early on in the season Hanoi, which is the Vietnam GP, and we were then later going to revisit for the first time in many years the track in Netherlands, which was Zandvoort, which has been updated to work with modern cars. Now obviously neither of those races have gone ahead this year, but they are in the game, which is really bloody cool. I spent quite a lot of time on both of these, and I'm going to give you some thoughts on it generally. Basically, Hanoi is a street circuit, but also not. You're not going through the middle of a city, but it is an adapted area of the city, so it does feel a bit like a street circuit, especially from the fact that the walls are always coming up at you. It's quite technically demanding. I certainly found it challenging, the most challenging of the two, but I feel like it's probably the most rewarding as well when you get it right. Hitting those blind corners at incredible speeds and lining it up so you don't just go ricocheting off the walls is a real challenge, and it's fun to do, and it reminiscent a bit of Baku, but maybe I find that race a little bit more fun to do, but it's nowhere near as challenging as say Monaco. So that was a cool addition. I really enjoyed that. Then we had Zandvoort, which is just a blast to race around. It's there because I'm guessing it's come back because it's Netherlands, and Max has become this huge hero of the sport and is drawing in massive crowds, so having a home race for him was a huge deal, and I'm really gutted that he's not been able to do that this year, and we've not had that experience and that carnival atmosphere I'd imagine that would have brought. However, I had a great time on Zandvoort. It's very, very short, it's very, very quick. The banking turns are super exciting. You take most of it flat out from what I can tell. There are some fairly extreme braking zones, but I had a really good time with it. It's got a great flow to it. It feels just rapid and exciting, and I do look forward to next year when hopefully we get to see both of these tracks in action for real. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm focusing on the new features in F1 2020. The game still feels great. Let's not beat around the bush here. It's not like this year suddenly the handling is broken or the feel of the cars doesn't work. Of course it does. Codemasters have been iterating on this now for several years in this current generation of hardware, and of course when we get around to next year's game, we're going to be on a new generation, so who knows what that will look like. Will it stick to the formula of let's remove all the features that have been built in over a generation using the excuse that we're on new hardware? I really hope not. I really hope My Team doesn't go anywhere, because it's exactly what I want from a Formula 1 game. Finally getting that mixture of management and racing, and it even does a great job of couching in the reality of the sport, because guess what? There have been team owners who also raced in their team before. Okay, arguably not one in a long time, but they have existed, so there is a reality to it, which I find is super compelling and just helps contextualize the whole experience. So like I said, the game still feels great, the game still plays great. I think the sound is good, I think the visual representation of the sport is good, I think the car models look great. Yeah, look, crashes will never look as dramatic and realistic as they do in real life, because this has to be kind of a safety first presentation. They don't want to glorify those things because, as we saw last year, people do die in those things, so they're not to be taken lightly. But I think the game is a fantastic representation of Formula 1. It's nailed it once again this year. I'm really enjoying the My Team mode. I'm going to keep going through it. I've done about half a year so far for this review, and I'm going to keep going and probably do multiple years, because it really does incentivize that continuous playing, and it's a challenging thing because you start from nothing, so it's all about building your team and getting further ahead with it, and challenging the guys at the front, because at the moment I'm really just more in the midfield, and it feels fun to do. I'm loving this year's iteration, guys. hats off to Codemasters for yet another fantastic racing experience, and I hope you guys are all enjoying it or will enjoy it just as much as I have, and I look forward to seeing you all out on the track. So thank you very much for listening to or watching another episode of Experience Kills. I've been Ben. You can find me on Twitter at DIYE. You can find Experience Kills at Experience Kills, strangely enough. We're obviously on YouTube, which is hopefully where you're watching this, so please give us a like and subscribe on there. That is literally all we ask for. If, however, you are listening to this, which is also an option, on iTunes or Spotify, check out the YouTube channel, by all means. We have a landing page now, which can be found at www.experiencekills.co.uk. I don't know why I bothered putting in the W's. I don't think you need to do that anymore. Show my age, I think. And yeah, just check us out wherever we can be found. Let me know what you think of F1 2020. Hope you all enjoyed it as much as I have, but stick your comments in the YouTube field, or, get hold of us on Twitter. So until next time, have a good one.